Spring 1944. While the world burned in global war, the Baldwin Locomotive Works in Philadelphia rolled out something the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad never actually wanted: 30 massive articulated locomotives, Class EM1, a 2884 wheel arrangement, a configuration sometimes grouped with the Yellowstone family, though the B&O never used that name. Fleet numbers 7,600 through 7,629. Each one came in at roughly £1 million when the tender was fully loaded. Each one packed 115,000 pounds of tractive effort. Each one represented a compromise because what the B&O really wanted was diesel power. But the War Production Board had other ideas. Diesel production was restricted for the war effort. The railroad needed power to move coal, steel, and freight through the Appalachian Mountains. Steam was the only option, so Baldwin delivered what became the smallest standard gauge 2884 ever constructed, the most numerous of its wheel arrangement, and among the most technologically advanced steam locomotives ever built for American service. And then, history forgot about them. The Baltimore and Ohio faced terrain that broke lesser railroads. Between Cumberland, Maryland, and Grafton, West Virginia, the main line climbed 4 brutal mountain grades. Cranberry grade topped out near 2.8% in places. 17-mile grade. Cheat River grade pushed 2.4%. Newburg grade. This was the west end of the Cumberland Division, where the Alleghenies showed no mercy to anything on rails. The EM1s were built specifically for this torture. Baldwin construction numbers 70,062 through 70,081 were in the first batch delivered in 1944. Another 10, construction numbers 71,502 through 71,511, arrived in 1945. Every technical specification pointed toward one purpose: move maximum tonnage over maximum grades with maximum reliability. 4 cylinders, each 24 by 32 inches. 64-inch drivers, smaller than Big Boy's 68-inch wheels, but perfectly suited for mountain lugging. Boiler pressure set deliberately low at 235 pounds per square inch, which gave the EM1 a factor of adhesion of 4.22. That number matters. High adhesion means less wheel slip. Less slip means you can actually use all that power when grades approach 3%. The weight distribution told the story Baldwin's engineers wanted to tell. 485,000 pounds on the drivers. Another 142,000 pounds on the lead and trailing trucks. Total locomotive weight, 627,000 pounds. The tender added another 328,000 pounds when loaded with 22,000 gallons of water and 25 tons of coal. But the real genius lived in the details. Every single axle on the locomotive and tender rode on roller bearings, every single one. This was not common practice in 1944. Roller bearings cost more. They required precision manufacturing, but they cut friction dramatically. The EM1s became legendary for being so free-rolling that crews claimed a few men could move one on level track with the cylinder cocks open. Railroad workers called them yard creepers. Worthington feedwater heaters recovered waste heat. An HTM automatic stoker fed that massive firebox, 117.5 square feet of great area, with 5 thermic syphons adding another 211 square feet of heating surface. Large piston valves delivered high steam flow to each cylinder. Lateral cushioning devices on the lead drivers of both engine units eased these behemoths through curves that would punish rigid locomotives into early retirement. When B&O President Roy B. White inspected the first completed locomotive, contemporary accounts say he looked it over and remarked that it seemed to have everything the railroad had been asking for. He was not wrong. These were the most technologically advanced locomotives the B&O ever owned. The EM1 locomotives went straight to work on the West End. They ran double-headed on coal drags. They pushed merchandise freights up Cranberry grade, where the rails climbed nearly 3% in places. Because they had roller bearings throughout, the railroad initially used them on mail and express trains too. These were premium services that required speed and reliability. In their early years, the EM1 locomotives delivered exactly what the railroad needed. Then came January 21, 1947. Near Oakland, Maryland, Train 29 was working through the mountains behind engine 7625. Something went wrong. The locomotive derailed and it rolled onto the engineer's side. The engineer died in the accident. After that, the Baltimore and Ohio restricted the EM1 locomotives to coal and freight service only. No more mail trains, no more express runs, just tonnage. As diesels arrived through the late 1940s and the early 1950s, the EM1 locomotives migrated west. They worked the Pittsburgh division over Sand Patch Grade, that infamous 1.8% westbound climb through Pennsylvania. They hauled lake mineral traffic in northern Ohio, iron ore and dolomite westbound, and coal moving east toward the steel mills. Photographer William P. Price, a Cumberland native, captured them on film, both still photographs and 8mm footage working sand patch with pairs of 210-2 Big Six helpers pushing from the rear. The earth shook when they passed. Let's talk about Big Boy. Union Pacific's 4884 locomotives get all the glory. 25 were built, 8 survived. When people think biggest steam locomotive, they think Big Boy. The numbers tell part of that story. Big Boy produced 135,375 pounds of tractive effort, over 20,000 pounds more than the EM1. Big Boy weighed roughly 1.25 million pounds fully loaded, about 300,000 pounds heavier. Big Boy developed 6,300 horsepower, compared with the EM1's estimated 5,900. But size and raw power do not tell the complete story. The EM1 was designed to fit the Baltimore and Ohio's restrictive clearances, tunnels, bridges, and curves that dated back to the 1850s. Nothing larger could operate on those lines. Baldwin's engineers had to pack maximum capability into minimum dimensions. The result was the smallest standard gauge 2884 ever built. Yet on the grades they were built to conquer, the EM1 locomotives delivered. That 4.22 factor of adhesion meant they could start heavy trains without slipping drivers. The low boiler pressure extended maintenance intervals. The roller bearings slashed maintenance costs and reduced resistance. Railroad historian George Drury wrote that despite the Baltimore and Ohio's initially cool reception, the EM1 locomotives soon established themselves as one of the premier articulated locomotives in the East. They were not the biggest, they were not the most powerful, but they were exactly what the Baltimore and Ohio needed, even if the railroad did not know it when they ordered them. By 1958, the end was already written. The B&O halted all major steam locomotive expenditures. Overhauls in progress were canceled. Locomotives due for heavy maintenance went straight to scrap instead. Between 1957 and 1960, all 30 EM1 locomotives were cut up, but 2 almost survived. Engine 7600, renumbered 650 in 1956, was earmarked for preservation by the B&O Railroad Museum in Baltimore. A preservation team had worked hard preparing the locomotive for display. Orders were cut to move it from Benwood Junction, West Virginia, to the museum. A yardmaster misunderstood the movement order. He interpreted it as instructions to send the locomotive to Dietz's scrapyard. By the time anyone realized the mistake, Engine 7600 was being cut apart with torches. The yardmaster was fired. The locomotive was gone. Engine 7609, renumbered 659, was offered by the railroad to the city of Wheeling, West Virginia for static display. The city declined. The locomotive was scrapped. On April 19, 1960, the last EM1 had its fire dropped. The end of steam on America's first railroad. Not one survived. Today, 8 big boys remain on display. Thousands of people photograph number 4014 when Union Pacific runs it on excursions. The EM1 locomotives exist only in archives, in the photographs of William P. Price, in the memories of men who fired them and ran them through the mountains, and in engineering diagrams filed in museums. They were the forgotten beasts, built when they were not wanted, too modern for their brief era, gone before anyone thought to save even one. But the men who ran them knew. The engineers who designed them knew. These were among the finest articulated locomotives ever built in America. 30 rolling contradictions, unwanted but excellent, compact but powerful, brief but unforgettable. The territory remembers them, even if history forgot.